So the title of our short course is Climate Change and its Influence on Sustainable Development. As you can see under Section 1, Introduction to Junior Cycle, this is common to all short courses. Moving down, we have Section 2, which is the rationale. So we aim to look at the consequences of climate change, as it will have a devastating impact on the lives of the youth. Education is essential to global response on climate change. It helps young people to understand and address the impact of global warming, which further encourages changes in their attitudes and behaviour. This topic is relevant cross-curricular links, and students will be expected to draw on and further develop their prior knowledge. Finally, we have a look at industry and its impact on climate change and the effects of sustainability and what this can entail in combating the issue. Section 3 then looks at the aim. The aim of our short course on climate change and its influence on sustainable development aims to educate students on the importance of this subject area with the ever-changing climates and weather patterns of the world, and also in an Irish context.
Within Topic 4 links, we look at statements of learning and key skills. Statements of learning contain 24 statements which are defined in the framework for junior cycle. Within this podcast, we will examine how our short course relates to 3 of these statements. These statements are vital towards promoting effective learning and links the subject to the central features of learning and teaching at junior cycle level. Moving on from this, subjects provide students with opportunities to develop key skills. The junior cycle curriculum focuses on the 8 key skills: being literate, managing myself, staying well, managing information, and thinking. Numeracy, creativity, working with others, and communication. Throughout this short course, we've targeted each individual skill separately. In Section 5 Overview, we look at how we broke down our course. The junior cycle focuses on problem solving and developing students through strands. We have broke the course down into 3 strands to promote effective development. Strand 1 includes the concepts of climate change. It looks at recent issues, implications, and personal impacts on climate change. Strand 2 integrates the construction industry and its effects. Students will look at the methods of construction and how trends affect climate change. Strand 3 is the concept of sustainable development. Students will look into complex ideas and deepen their general knowledge. Students will look at their own actions and complications.
In Topic 6 is the expectations for students. This is an umbrella term that links learning outcomes with annotated examples of students' work. For NCCA developed short courses, in some cases examples of work associated with a specific learning outcome or with a group of learning outcomes will be available. Schools who design their own short courses may wish to create a bank of examples of student work for discussion and future reference. So students will be expected to demonstrate a solid understanding of the climate system. Students will learn about how the climate system works, what factors cause climate to change across different timescales and how those factors interact. They will also be able to identify a connection between human activity and the current warming trend and consider some of the potential social, economic and environmental consequences of climate change. So as you can see here, we have some bullet points of what students will be expected to know at the end of this short course.
Okay, so learning outcomes. And as we can see here now in learning outcomes, the outcomes are numbered within each strand. We've covered the strands already from 1 to 3. The numbering is intended to support the teacher planning in the first instance. So we've different steps in the strands to aid the teacher. Now we're going to look on at this, it's just to help with the outcomes and bringing them across to the teacher in the short course. So we're moving on down here now. Strand 1, the concepts of climate change. Now this is exactly what I'm talking about. You can see here in climate change, we have 1.1, research the long-term changes in the Earth's climate, compare and contrast the work. And we've 1.2 and 1.3. This goes on to discussing the changes and the primary greenhouse gases, because we need to educate the children on the basics of climate change and why it's so important before we go near sustainable development. This is very important now, and we go on to cover greenhouse gases and mitigation, of course, which is a big deal because mitigation is actually how we're going about making the world a better place and combating climate change. So when you go on here now, after learning the key concepts of climate change, we need to learn the concepts of the construction industry because it's just important, because we see that the trends that may be affecting, what is good practice and poor practice. We need to distinguish between both, and this is done with research of the students, group work, individual works. This can be done with presentations and debates, discusses, like the children will be able to discuss this off the top of their head and so forth. And then once we've learned the key concepts of both of them, we can then go on to strand 3, which is sustainable development. Now, we look up sustainable resources like in individual or group work. So we can see 3.1 and 3.2 here is like renewable sources versus non-renewable sources is 3.2 there on renewable sources like timber, wood. What is the most adequate material to be used? Is there other materials that are more environmentally friendly than wood? Like, as in, this is up to the students to find out, bring it back to the classroom, formative feedback, etc. The design layout, how does the design layout affect, like, the students can learn this, and the sustainable long-term goals of the sustainable development, like, as in, why is it so important to promote it? And what are the implications of sustainable development if we don't practice sustainable development? Like, where is the world going to be in, say, 50 years' time if we just ignore everything and continue as we're going on the way? Like, as in, these are all things we need to keep in mind, and just keep it. It's just 3 strands, simple strands, and the students will all it's learning the concepts. It's nothing too complicated, and it's moving on to the next one then after that.
So I'm going to be talking about the assessment that's going to take place throughout this short course. So the first thing to take note is the interlinked nature of learning and assessment, and all the elements that interlink with student learning, such as ongoing assessment, of course, state-certified examinations that take place, assessment tasks, and classroom-based assessments that take place throughout the short course. So first of all, we need to appreciate really the importance of formative assessment and how it gives the student a chance and an opportunity to develop on their thoughts and really get them to think about what they're learning, and making the student really a researcher and in charge of their own learning instead of the teacher standing up on top of the classroom and teaching to them. So first of all, we talk about the poster, which is a case study, which firstly just gets them to talk about a case study that they found, such as the effects of climate change. Here they'd compile all relevant information and present it in front of the class and to the teacher, of course. So this basically gets them to research all the topic and put themselves in charge of their own learning first. And then secondly, we have the criteria which is involved in this, which is the inclusion of the key concepts. So to see if they hit everything involved in the concept, real life facts and examples, which is a big important point here, just showing where these glaciers, for example, are found. And then thirdly, presentation of the poster. Then for the second presentation, we would do a research project in which students would create a PowerPoint presentation, and this really would tie into other short courses possibly in the school, giving them presentation skills and just opening them up to the world of group work and presenting in front of people and presenting their work in a nice, fashionable and important kind of a way. So here we just talk about the inclusion of key concepts again, and the balance between text, images, graphs, and overall presentation skills. And this, of course, ties into the links and the strands of our subject. Finally, we talk about the classroom-based assessment. So here we would have our oral presentation in which students, again, research, and this ties in with the case study. They research all the main elements and bring it together in this presentation in which they would present to the teacher. Here, I have laid out as a group the key features of quality, so which are investigating, communicating, and knowledge and understanding. So here, this would show an excellent student and what they could do. So example of this would be evidence of the student having found information surrounding the given topic, and accuracy surrounding the sources of information. Just going that step ahead again and going out on their own and having researched everything and just basically listening to the teacher, what the teacher said, and going out on their own and doing a bit more research. Finally, then we have the communicating and the knowledge and understanding, which just makes them again reflect And this can be seen in the Department of Education and Skills book, The Framework for Junior Cycle, which they clearly show this. So just finally, it is expected that most of the assessment activities during the teaching of short courses, and especially this short course, will be formative, and the evidence of learning will be generated according to the short course specification and will relate directly to the aims and learning outcomes of the short course. So that really kind of ties in with the inclusive assessment, and it's important really just to think of all students when doing, let's say, the presentation here. So here are a few methods in which we're going to lay out throughout the short course in which this kind of satisfies this kind of a need in the classroom. So first of all, we have, for example, if a student can't physically type, they may use dictation software in order to help them out with this. And then if a student can't speak, those resources are there for them to draw, write, create a document which explains the information just as clearly. And then finally, there's other examples, but let's say if a student had a hearing impediment, that they would be supplied with a microphone in which they could use throughout the presentation, and this probably would make them a lot more comfortable when presenting, therefore making the standard much higher in the class. So I guess the final thing is just to say the importance of assessment, but however, having said this, I'm not over assessing the students and putting too much pressure on each student, giving them guidance and help that they need throughout the short course and in order to achieve their goals and educating the youth of today.